All right, so we're diving into the Fa tradition today. And
Sounds fascinating.
yeah, especially with all this talk about it being a satanic cult. I mean,
Right.
where does that even come from? It seems so...
Wildly off base.
Yeah, exactly. But we've got some great sources to help us unpack this, including a letter from Professor Sato.
Oh, Professor Sato,
Yeah.
the expert on...
Yeah, the Izongo Chair for the Fight Against Satanic Cults at Harvard.
Wow, if anyone knows about cults, it's him.
Exactly. And he starts off strong, saying, the Fa tradition is a revered spiritual practice with deep roots in African spirituality and boasts a global community of close to 100 million practitioners, double the number of Catholics in France, and 6 times its Jewish population.
That's huge.
Right, you'd think with that many people.
It'd be a little more mainstream.
Yeah, more understood at least.
Yeah.
But then he goes on to say, Fa embodies a philosophy of wisdom, love, and community centered on respect for nature, ancestors, and the sanctification of daily life. Not exactly screaming satanic, is it?
Not at all. It sounds more like...
Peaceful.
Yeah.
Mindful.
Exactly, finding that balance.
And Professor Sato actually draws a parallel between Fur's philosophy and...
Buddhism.
Right. That emphasis on inner harmony with oneself, community, and nature.
So we're talking peace, mindfulness, finding that balance. It's such a contrast to how some people try to portray Fa.
And Professor Sato's research really backs this up. He studied and interviewed Fa priests and priestesses, Haunans, all over the world.
And what did he find?
He found them to be, and I'm quoting here, individuals who radiated joy, wisdom, and a commitment to uplift their communities.
Okay, so we have a renowned expert on cults stating that Fa is not one. But he also mentions this Sect X group.
Huh.
What's the deal with that?
Ah, that's where Professor Sato gets to the heart of the distinction.
Between
Fa and a genuine, harmful satanic cult.
Okay, so how does Sect X fit into all of this?
Professor Sato uses them as a prime example of what a real satanic cult looks like.
How is it different from Fa?
Well, for starters, he highlights the secrecy and harmful intentions of Sect X.
Which is completely opposite. Exactly. Fa is all about community and harmony, remember? And Professor Sato really emphasizes the actual threat posed by groups like Sect X, something that just doesn't align with Fa's core principles.
It's like we're talking about 2 completely different worlds here. And speaking of worlds, we also have this image of a spiral. A dynamic spiral of holistic development. And guess where Fa sits?
At the top.
The very top.
Yeah.
Labeled turquoise or holistic. It represents the highest level of consciousness.
While Sect X would be...
Down at the bottom.
Way down at the bottom.
Wow. Okay, so we've established that Fa is open, community-focused, striving for that higher level of consciousness.
Right.
While Sect X is secretive, harmful, and stuck in the depths. But what about the whole issue of sacrifices?
Oh, yes.
That's something that gets brought up a lot with both Fa and satanic practices.
And it's a major source of misunderstanding.
So let's clear this up. What's the truth about sacrifices in Fa? How are they different from what we see in satanic cults?
Well, according to the Fa tradition of Benin, an overview, the purpose of sacrifices in Fa is to move the eye of the Fa.
Move the eye of the Fa. Okay, I need you to break that down for me.
Essentially, it's about empowering the divinities to act in the material world.
So it's not about...
Appeasing some dark force.
Yeah.
Engaging with the spiritual realm to bring about positive change.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. But what about the actual sacrifices themselves? What are we talking about here?
Well, historically, some sacrifices have involved animals.
But...
It's important to note that animal sacrifices aren't the only kind.
Right, there are.
Offerings of fruits, sweets, even symbolic actions.
So it's not all like blood and gore and...
No, not at all.
Like we see in the movies.
Right. And even when animals are involved, it's seen as honoring the gift of life.
Especially since they're often consumed afterwards, right?
Exactly. It's about recognizing the interconnectedness of life.
Our place in the natural order.
Exactly. It's not about appeasing some evil entity, but maintaining balance.
That makes a lot more sense. So it really depends on how we view sacrifices, whether we call them satanic or divine.
Right. It often comes down to our own cultural and religious framework.
In the Fa tradition of Benin, an overview actually brings up a great example of this with the Christian missionaries who
saw Fa miracles and immediately attributed them to the devil.
It's like their own beliefs blinded them to what was actually happening.
They saw evil where none existed.
It makes you wonder how many other misconceptions about Fa come from that same place.
I'd say a good number of them, unfortunately.
Well, that's why we're here, right? to shed some light on the truth.
Absolutely. So where do we go from here?
Well, we've started to unpack the whole sacrifice issue and how it's different in Fa compared to actual satanic practices. But there's another element we need to discuss. Mojos.
Ah, yes, mojo.
Another source of fascination and fear.
Often misrepresented and misunderstood.
I have to admit, I've always been intrigued by the idea of objects holding spiritual power.
It's a powerful concept.
So what's the real story here? What is a mojo in the context of Fae?
Think of it as a personally tailored magical item, energetically linked to its owner.
Okay, so it's not just some...
Generic talisman.
Right. And what is mojo describes it as having administrator access to the matrix of reality.
Wow.
I know, right? Allowing the owner to influence their life and surroundings.
But that makes you wonder about the potential for misuse.
Exactly. If a mojo can influence reality, couldn't it be used for evil purposes?
It's a natural question, but the source is very clear. Mojos can't be used for evil.
Really?
Yeah.
Why not? What's stopping someone from using it for nefarious purposes?
Because a guiding light being inhabits the mojo.
So is it like a...
Spiritual safeguard.
Yeah. If the owner turns bad, the light being just
Apart.
they're only granted to those with pure hearts.
Dedicated to a life of light and truth.
So it's like this powerful tool.
But inherently aligned with goodness.
That's incredible. And this actually aligns with Engagement Fae Generic, which states that mojos are only given to those committed to light and truth.
Right, it all ties together.
Okay, so it's not just about wanting something. It has to be.
Valid in faith.
Right. So a mojo is like this powerful tool, but one that's geared towards positive change. But can you give me a concrete example of how it actually works? I'm having a little trouble wrapping my head around it.
Sure. What is a mojo tells the story of Laurent escaping the mafia.
Oh, yeah. Intense situation.
Right, and the mojo orchestrates a series of seemingly negative events.
Like that double hotel booking.
Exactly. At first glance, it seems like a major inconvenience, but
Of course, there's more to it.
always. It leads to Laurent getting a free room without having to give his name.
Which is crucial when you're on the run from the mafia.
Right. The mojo was thinking several steps ahead,
It's like it could see the bigger picture.
operating on a different level.
While Laurent was focused on just surviving the moment.
Exactly.
That's wild. So mojos work across time and space in ways we can barely grasp.
That's what the source suggests. It emphasizes the mojo's ability to operate with a much broader perspective than the human mind.
And sometimes orchestrating events that seem negative in the moment, but ultimately lead to a greater good,
Right. It's about trusting the process.
even when things get tough.
Exactly. It's a reminder that we don't always have all the answers, and that surrendering to a higher wisdom can lead to unexpected and beneficial outcomes.
Okay, so we've got these powerful mojos working behind the scenes, guiding and protecting people on their paths. But let's bring in another voice here. We have Haunen Marius Solanco's perspective from mariusfapasatanic.mp3. He really emphasizes the deep commitment of Fa practitioners to peace, harmony, and love.
Yes, and his words really highlight the point that Fa is about personal growth and positive transformation.
Not aligning with some dark force.
Exactly.
He talks about how practitioners actively work to eradicate harmful behaviors from their lives, things like drug use, violence, and egotism.
They're striving to be better people.
Which is not what you'd expect from a satanic cult.
Not at all. And he also highlights Ubuntu, the African philosophy of interconnectedness and shared responsibility within the community.
I am, because we are. Such a powerful idea.
So different from the individualistic mindset we see so much of these days.
Right, and that sense of interconnectedness is so deeply woven into the Fa tradition.
It's at its core.
And the Fa tradition of Benin, an overview, also talks about the role of Hanens in cultural transmission.
Passing down those traditions and values to younger generations.
It's about preserving that rich cultural heritage.
Ensuring the wisdom of Fa continues to thrive.
Which is incredible when you think about all the forces trying to erase or distort their traditions.
It's a testament to the strength of this tradition and the dedication of its practitioners.
Fa is not just surviving, it's thriving.
And doing so while upholding a high standard of integrity.
Right, the source is very clear about that. The integrity of the Haunens is paramount.
They're accountable to their community and ultimately to the divine.
There's a real sense of sacred responsibility there.
Absolutely. They understand that their actions have consequences, both in this world and the spiritual realm.
And that understanding is reflected in their commitment to ethical conduct. The source really emphasizes that the Haunens are expected to embody the values they teach.
To be examples of honesty, fairness, and compassion.
It's like they've taken a sacred oath to uphold those principles.
Well, they have. The fat tradition of Benin, an overview, actually mentions a sacred oath taken by the Hounans,
No way.
Oh.
So it's literally a vow.
pledging their commitment to spiritual integrity, service to the community, and ethical behavior.
Wow, that speaks volumes about the level of dedication within the fat tradition.
It's about walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
Exactly. And that commitment is also reflected in their dedication to healing and supporting their communities.
Which is another key aspect of the tradition.
The source actually mentions that Hounans possess significant spiritual and healing powers.
Oh, absolutely. Their connection to the divine, combined with their knowledge of rituals and traditional medicine, allows them to address a wide range of ailments.
Both physical and emotional.
Exactly. It's about restoring balance and harmony on all levels.
It's that holistic approach to well-being that I find so fascinating.
It's not just about treating the symptoms, but getting to the root cause.
And that's where their spiritual powers come into play, right? They perform rituals, cleanse negative energies, provide protection, offer guidance through divination.
It's a multifaceted approach that goes beyond what we typically see in Western medicine.
It's like they're tapping into a different dimension of reality to bring healing and balance into the world.
In a way, they are. They act as intermediaries between the spiritual and physical realms.
No wonder they hold such a respected position within their communities.
They're not just religious figures, they're healers, guides, and protectors.
It's such a different picture from the one those spreading those satanic cult rumors are trying to create.
Couldn't be more different. And it really highlights the importance of looking beyond superficial labels.
And those preconceived notions.
Yes, especially when encountering unfamiliar spiritual practices.
So as we continue exploring Fae, it's becoming increasingly clear that it's not about darkness and manipulation.
But about light, community, and a profound connection to the divine.
Beautifully put. And I think that understanding is crucial as we continue to challenge the misconceptions and delve deeper into the complexities of Fae.
Agreed. There's so much more to uncover. So much more to uncover, like the people who keep this tradition alive.
The practitioners themselves.
Yes, the Ahonans.
And the Fen tradition of Benin.
Yeah.
An overview really highlights their role, not just as spiritual leaders, but as integral members of their families and communities.
They're expected to embody the values they teach.
To be role models for their communities. And that responsibility goes beyond leading ceremonies or performing rituals right. They're raising families, working jobs, participating in community events. They're living full lives while upholding this deep spiritual commitment.
It's about weaving their spiritual practice into the fabric of everyday life.
Finding that balance between their responsibilities to the divine and their roles in the world.
And it reminds me of what Hounan Marius Surenko said in mariusfapatsating.mp3.
About Fem being like a good parent.
Yes. It's not about punishing people for their mistakes.
It's about guiding them
supporting them on their journey.
towards becoming their best selves.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that guidance extends to the entire community.
It's all about that sense of interconnectedness.
Shared responsibility.
Which brings us back to Ubuntu.
I am, because we are.
Such a beautiful concept.
And so deeply woven into the Fafen tradition.
It really challenges that individualistic mindset we see so much of today.
It reminds us that we're all connected.
That our actions have ripple effects.
We don't exist in isolation.
We thrive when we support each other.
When we work together for the collective good.
And the Hounans are key to cultivating that sense of community.
Absolutely. And part of that cultivation involves passing down knowledge and traditions.
To the next generation.
Right. The Fae tradition of Benin. An overview talks about their role in cultural transmission.
Preserving that rich heritage.
Making sure the wisdom and teachings of Fae aren't lost.
Especially in the face of modernization and globalization.
It's inspiring to see them actively working to ensure the continuity of their tradition.
It would be so easy to let those ancient practices fade away.
But they're fighting to keep them alive.
And they're doing so while upholding a very high standard of integrity.
The source is very clear about that.
The integrity of the Hounans is paramount.
They're accountable not just to their community,
but to the divine.
It's a huge responsibility.
And that responsibility is reflected in their commitment to ethical conduct.
The Fae tradition of Benin, an overview, really emphasizes that.
That the Hounans are expected to embody the values they teach.
They have to be living examples.
Of honesty, fairness, compassion.
They can't just talk the talk, they have to walk the walk.
It's like they've taken a sacred oath to uphold those principles.
Well, as it turns out, they have.
Really?
The source mentions a sacred oath taken by the Hounans.
So it's a formal vow.
pledging their commitment to spiritual integrity, service to the community, and ethical behavior.
Wow, that really shows the level of dedication within the Fa tradition.
It's about living a life aligned with the highest values.
And that commitment is also reflected in their dedication to healing and supporting their communities.
Which is such a crucial aspect of the Fae tradition.
Speaking of healing, the source mentions that Hounans possess significant spiritual and healing powers.
Yes, their connection to the divine, their knowledge of rituals and traditional medicine, it all comes together.
To address a wide range of ailments.
Both physical and emotional.
It's that holistic approach to well-being that I find so fascinating.
It's not just about treating symptoms.
It's about restoring balance.
And harmony on all levels.
And that's where their spiritual powers come into play.
They perform rituals, they cleanse negative energies, they offer protection, they provide guidance through divination.
It's a multifaceted approach.
That goes beyond what we typically see in Western medicine.
It's almost as if they can tap into a different dimension of reality.
To bring healing and balance into the world.
In a way, they are.
They act as intermediaries between the spiritual and physical realms.
No wonder they hold such a revered position within their communities.
They're healers, guides, protectors, keepers of wisdom.
It's a far cry from the image of a cult leader.
Or someone dabbling in dark forces.
Couldn't be more different.
It really highlights the importance of moving beyond those superficial labels.
And preconceived notions.
Exactly.
So as we delve deeper into Fama, it becomes increasingly clear that it's not about darkness and manipulation.
It's about light, community, and a profound connection to the divine.
It's about living a life of integrity, compassion, and service to others.
Beautifully put. And I think that understanding is crucial as we continue to explore the complexities of Fa and challenge those misconceptions.
All right, so we've explored the role of the Hounans, those individuals who dedicate their lives to upholding the principles of Fa. But there's still more to uncover.
Indeed. Next, let's delve into the heart of Fa's practices and explore what makes this tradition so unique and powerful.
Okay, so we've talked about the Hounans and their role in Fa, but now let's dive into something I'm really curious about.
Yeah.
Mojos.
Ah, yes, mojos.
Reading What is a Mojo really opened my eyes to...
Their true purpose.
Yeah, it's like there's so much.
Misinformation out there.
And fear, too.
Definitely. People tend to view mojos and Fa in general through a lens of external judgment.
Right, instead of trying to understand them from the inside.
Exactly. The source encourages a shift to internal understanding.
Which I love. It's about setting aside those preconceived notions.
Especially those fueled by negative stereotypes.
And approaching this tradition with genuine curiosity.
Openness.
And when we do that, when we move past those judgments.
We can start to see the true purpose of a mojo.
And what is a mojo lays it out pretty clearly. Protection, guidance, and support.
On the path of personal growth.
It's about aligning with the divine order.
Not some dark force.
And seeking assistance in fulfilling our potential.
Not our every whim.
Right. The source makes that distinction very clear.
It's not about getting everything you want.
Your wishes have to be valid in Fa.
Exactly. It's not some magical genie granting wishes left and right.
It's a tool for spiritual growth and alignment.
Desires need to be in harmony with a higher purpose.
Something that serves the greater good.
It really challenges that instant gratification mindset we're so used to.
And it requires a deep level of trust.
Not just in the mojo itself.
But in the wisdom of Fa.
And the divine order it represents.
The source talks about the logic of a mojo going way beyond the standard or even systemic reasoning of the human mind.
They operate on a completely different level.
It's like they can see something we can't.
And we have to trust that.
Even when things seem to be going wrong.
There's a greater plan unfolding.
It's a lesson in letting go of control.
And surrendering to something larger than ourselves.
Which can be really hard.
Especially in a world obsessed with control and certainty.
But what is mojo, uses this interesting term, chaotic processes.
To describe how mojos work.
It's not about linear, predictable outcomes.
It's about embracing the unexpected.
Trusting that setbacks and challenges are part of the journey.
And that's where faith comes in.
Right. Believing that the mojo is working in our favor.
Even when we can't see the whole picture.
And the story of Laurent escaping the mafia is a perfect example of this.
From What is a Mojo?
Yeah. How the mojo orchestrated those seemingly negative events.
Like the double hotel booking.
Which at first seemed like a huge inconvenience.
But ultimately saved him.
If he had panicked and tried to control the situation based on his limited understanding.
Things could have gone very differently.
But he trusted the process.
And the mojo guided him to safety.
It's a pretty powerful reminder that we're not alone.
That there are forces beyond our comprehension working to support us.
And those forces, as we've been exploring, are not malevolent or demonic, as some might believe.
The guiding light being within the mojo is a force of light,
Aligned with the divine order of Fae.
dedicated to helping us reach our highest potential.
It's all coming together now.
The more we explore Fae,
The more we see a tradition that emphasizes harmony, balance, in connection to the divine.
and mojos, far from being objects of fear, are tools that support us on that path.
So what's the big takeaway here? What do we want listeners to walk away with?
I hope they walk away with a sense of wonder and curiosity,
A willingness to question those preconceived notions.
and to approach Fae and all spiritual traditions, really, with an open mind.
And a compassionate heart.
Beautifully said.
Remember what Professor Sato said. Beware who you listen for.
Wise words.
Don't let fear and prejudice cloud your understanding.
Seek truth. Seek understanding.
And trust in the light. Well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive into the Fae tradition.
Thank you for joining us.
We hope you've enjoyed exploring this fascinating spiritual path. Until next time, keep those minds open, keep seeking, and keep the conversation going.